Hi, I'm Amy Driggs, and this is my assignment for Module 8, which is to just choose a agency of choice and describe its adjudication processes. The administration that I chose was actually the Social Security Administration, which is kind of the big boy of adjudication. It's been around for a long time, established in 1935. It's an independent agency. And interestingly enough, its adjudication system is probably one of the largest adjudication systems in the world. Of the sum under 2,000 ALJs, actually the SSA employs 1,500 of them. So as far as formal adjudication kind of processes, Social Security, they do that. And I'm sure that almost a lot of the different sections that talk about adjudication were probably formed by the trial and error that happened in the Social Security Administration. You talk about there's 10,000 kind of more administrative judges, but straight on ALJs, Social Security is your place, the Social Security Administration. One of the things that's interesting about the Social Security Administration is that it actually, it has a program's operational manual systems, and in there, it actually requires a lot with due process because, it makes sense, right? Because Social Security actually can deprive a person of liberty or property because sometimes, if Social Security, they're responsible for a person's livelihood. So they have a couple of things that they have to do. They have to provide a written notice of an adverse action. They have to give the person time to question and appeal an action before it occurs. And then it has a right to a formal conference at the reconsideration level of an appeal. So kind of a reconsideration hearing. And then the fourth one I think is really interesting. They have the right to continue receiving unreduced benefits until there is a decision at the first level of appeal. And that's because of two cases, Goldberg v. Kelly in 1970 and Cardinal v. Matthew in 1975. And individuals cannot waive this written notice because it is an inalienable right. And this must be delivered to the person in question 10 days before any payment can be disrupted. So what is exactly what they would call an adverse action? Most of the adverse actions fall into three categories, but they aren't limited to these. The first one is whether a person is actually just even eligible for Social Security. The second one would be the amount of the Social Security payment. And then the third would be the fact if someone was overpaid, or the amount of the overpayment if it's in dispute, or whether the person actually must repay it. And once that sort of adverse action the person has been notified of that adverse action, they can have a kind of predetermination where they kind of dispute the adverse action, and then they kind of come back and they say, nope, we are for sure going to take one of these adverse actions. And then a person may request a formal hearing with a ADJ and an ALJ. Sorry about that. And from the time that they receive their predetermination, they have 60 days to appeal a decision. And they can, it has to be a written request. And it's really interesting because one of the fascinating things about the Social Security Administration is that a person applies. And so they actually have direct contact through something called My Social Security Account with the person who has the question of the adverse action. So that's actually kind of a little bit of a benefit that they have as far as like notice and that sort of thing. So they have 60 days to appeal that decision, and it may be approved or denied. Once it's approved, an agent contacts them, and it's called a hearing acknowledgement. And they ask you to submit, specifically in all sorts of software, documents that are needed to show proof of what you're claiming. And this is kind of a part of fulfilling the 554C, Section 554C requirement. And then they have 75 days before the hearing, they're sent a date and a time of their hearing. And this is actually interesting because, you know, this is fulfilling the 554B section requirement, but you can actually waive this at the Social Security Administration, mainly because they have such a backlog of cases, which I'll talk about later, that they can that people actually want to waive that right so that they can kind of move further ahead in the docket in case there's a cancellation or whatnot. So that's kind of an interesting part of that. They have a lot more information to share in the My Social Security account, and they give all sorts of information about representation through an attorney or other representative. They also have lots of information where they have a list of representatives at that point or some sort of nonprofits that can help. And then they're very meticulous about this because it's a formal hearing. They get 30 days notice and then a 5-day notice. And at this point, a person can request for, you know, any sort of access. They make sure that if there's a parent with a child, that the parent can be there if it's a minor that's involved in the case. And English can be provided for a person. A person can actually waive being at an ALJ hearing. However, the ALJ may demand that you come. Now, the hearing proceeds are prescribed in Section 557 of the Code. They can bring witnesses, they can cross-examine witnesses, they bring evidence, they make an audio recording, and at the end of that hearing, a written decision is made within 2 to 4 weeks. Once that decision is made, there is an opportunity for appeal. And again, you have that 60 days, that's kind of the magic number, to appeal. And if you don't appeal, then you may actually lose your right to appeal. The Social Security Administration actually has an appeals council. And the appeals council reviews the case and then decides whether or not to send it back to an LLJ. The appeals council then will send the final action on your case. And then again, there's another 60 days, right? The 60 days is kind of the magic number where a person has a right to appeal that in a court system, in an article in court. So Article 3 court. So that's kind of the little adjudication process. There's lots of interesting things because of the Social Security and such a big, huge ordeal with all of these different cases. They see 650,000 cases a year, and so that's a daunting number. It seems like they say on the website that cases take about 7 months to be seen, but actually in Hawaii and LA, the docket actually says about 15 months in order to have your case seen. Because there are so many ALJ judges, they're all over the United States, and you're kind of assigned to one in your region. And it's really interesting because there's so much data. You can see the dockets that each judge has. You can see their appeal versus denial rate. You can see how long it takes them to try cases. There's just a lot of information. And when you go through all of the different websites to look at that sort of thing, there's a lot of controversy surrounding that because with 650,000 appeals that are submitted each year, so they're submitted each year, 80% of initial applications are denied. So that 650,000, as I understand that, is the 20%, right? And of that 20% of all the applications that are actually seen, only 50%, or it varies by area, are one of those 20%. So the funny thing is that it's very controversial. Like, your judge can have a higher rate or a lower rate, and people they have a lot of criticism about someone who is, who's kind of being a little bit more lenient, with taxpayer money, or a little bit more that tugs at someone's heartstrings. I think it's a really hard situation to be in with the Social Security Administration with all of this money, and there's so much fraud associated with it. There's so much to keep tabs on. And it's amazing because, as I hear people talk about these different agencies, sometimes they're like, oh, I can't find much about the adjudication process. Okay, I found so much, and there is so much available to the public that it's almost daunting to just to sort through it. But as far as like information for the public, there's a wealth of information. Like I said, when you talk about, you know, direct access to them, like great customer service, I guess. But you know, if you had to wait 7 to 15 months to be seen, I'm sure a lot of the search and stuff is actually very informational when you search about, you know, problems or complaints about the Social Security Administration. But you have to go pretty far down to see people that are pretty frustrated. So I assume that there are people that are pretty frustrated, but boy, that Social Security Administration has a lot of the search and a lot of information for their customers. So I hope this was informative. I look forward to seeing everyone else's submission. And it's nice to spend this 10 minutes with you. Take care. Bye-bye.